Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kaytree, and today we are doing a reading vlog. So today's reading vlog is rereading the Hunger Games trilogy and then reading the new book. Well, newer, I guess it's been out for a few years, a year or two. But the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So I'm really excited about this one. I also have not read the Hunger Games trilogy in quite a few years. Like, I probably would say 6 or more, maybe. So it's been a while. I'm very excited and I'm gonna take you guys along. I also might annotate my copies of the originals because I don't think I ever have. Let me see. Doesn't look like it. I think when I read these originally, why is there a, okay, let's see. Don't you love to find little things that you used as bookmarks in your books when you grab them again? I don't think I was into highlighting or doing any of that when I originally read these, and I don't know if I've read them since. Well, I read them from the library before I got my own copy, and then, but anyway, we're going to start reading these books. So I hope you guys will join me and come along with me. Alright guys, I have not updated you guys in a while, so I did finish The Hunger Games, the first one. And this is the one that I remember the most, so I don't have a ton to say about it, although there were a couple of things in this one that I thought for some reason were in this one. I don't know why. Like Senna, that's his name, right? Senna. Okay. Being taken away, for some reason I thought that was in the first one. No, of course that's in the second one. And then I picked this one up and I read all of this one. Again, there was just a couple of like very small things that I thought was in the first one, and it was all like in this one. I also, for some reason, this one I remembered a little bit less, but I did not like remember how this one ended for some reason. So it's good to refresh my memory there. And now I've picked up Mockingjay and I literally have like 2.5 chapters left. Oh, so many thoughts. So I'm going to finish this one off and then chat with you guys again. And then we're going to start the new one. Alright guys, sorry about the hiatus and the late posting of this video because I got sick during and I completely lost my voice. It's still coming back. I apologize for it sounding weird. But I did finish Mockingjay and I wanted to kind of talk about this one a little bit. This one did not hit for me as well as it used to on this reread. I had more problems with it. This entire series, I don't even know where I put my other books, but this whole series is about a 4 star series for me. I've really enjoyed it, but it's never been like perfect 5 stars. But this book was not a 4-star for me. I put this at a 3.75 because I just had too many problems with it. And I want to talk about a few of those. I know everybody hates that Finnick died in this one, and I do too. I really do too. But rereading it, I was even more mad about this because of the way it happens in the book. For some reason, I had imagined, and I don't know what I was imagining because I've never even watched the movie of Mockingjay. I haven't watched Mockingjay part 1 or 2 of the movies, so I know I need to do that. But it wasn't even like I was imagining that, but I was imagining more of a scene when Finnick dies. And it's not. He's kind of like an afterthought. You're in Katniss's mind, and then all of a sudden, people are dying, and then, oh, let's look back down and realize Finnick's among them because oh yeah, he was a character, like a name character that was kind of important, so let's make sure we mention him for a split second. It was such an afterthought, and I think my biggest problem with this is that it was an afterthought. Like, he deserved a better death than this. So that's like one reason why going back into it, I was like, she didn't even give him like a death that he deserved. She just kind of threw it in as an afterthought, and I really hated that. And besides that, just this entire one with the political arc that's going on and everything, I kind of like, it drove me crazy a little bit because there's not a lot of hope in these books in general. I feel like Peeta is the most like hope-filled one in the books, and Peeta is kind of, that side of Peeta is kind of gone for a good majority of this book, and that's hard, especially since the good guys in the good side of this revolution is not really that good. Like, there's no like, this is morally wrong or this is morally right. It's just kind of like, you know, we're not even gonna say what was right and wrong. We're just gonna fight because this is what we're doing. And it's so strange. And then the fact that they go and they pitch another Hunger Games for the Capitol's children as a way to pay them back. I'm like, they're literally the exact same people. They're the exact same, the Capitol and this rebellion and everything. I'm like, you guys are acting the exact same. You just don't want to be the oppressed, you want to be the oppressor now. So that was really interesting rereading it, because I feel like that didn't hit as like hard and big in my mind. Like, yeah, they're pretty much the exact same people. And I was talking to my friend a little bit about it, and she's like, I think it's supposed to be kind of like a like how you can have bad in any form of government, and how that can kind of like creep in. And I get that to a point, but I'm wondering, where was the good form? I feel like you didn't give a good sense or good hope. I feel like Peeta's the one who actually defined those moral grounds in the book, and he just wasn't as present in this one, so it was kind of really hard. It's like, well, you got to remember what Peeta said here and here, and Katniss does from time to time, but it's still really like hard. And another thing about the end of this book is it's just so much is just left for you to wonder. I don't always prefer endings like that, kind of open-ended in sort of way. Kat is obviously sent back to District 12, and it's kind of like seen as like those who like they don't really want to deal with are kind of sent back to 12, and some of those who originated in 12 go back or whatnot. And so it's kind of like they don't even have any say-so. They don't check in. They don't like, the districts don't lead out that far. So I'm kind of like left with this unsettling feeling of like, did anything change in any of the other districts? Did District 12 just get off the hook because they were destroyed and then the outcasts were sent there? Or like, did the government actually get better? Did anything change? Did people's lives get better? We're not really told. So a lot of unsettling stuff at the end of this one. And so it just, the whole political arch and just not having hope and not define morally wrong and morally right, it was kind of like a sore spot for me. And I don't even remember how old I was when I read these originally, but I do think it would be interesting to have a conversation with some younger readers, you know, who are reading this book about those morals, since it doesn't really dictate them, but there's so many opportunities to do that. So yeah, that was kind of like my rethoughts of Mockingjay. And then we went into The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Susanna Collins. This is her newer one. This was published a couple years ago, I believe, either 2020, 2021, something like that. And this is a prequel. This is actually about President Snow, like, rise to who he was. And it takes place during the majority of the 10th Hunger Games. So this one was really interesting, and I am excited to talk spoilers with you guys about this one too. Alright guys, so The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I have a lot of thoughts about this one. I'm gonna first off start by saying that I've had heard a lot of mixed reviews on this one. I have heard multiple people saying that while it's like good, it's too long. This is the biggest of all of the Hunger Games, and they just said it's too long, there's too much useless information, it's too slow paced. And I've heard really good things about the movie. I'm super excited to check out the movie too, but I kind of disagree with everybody who says it's too long. Don't be mad at me. But my reasoning is that while there was a couple of parts, it was very few for me that I felt were a little slow, and I was like trying hard not to skim over. Most of the parts that were slower, I found so interesting, because so much of this book was just littered with tiny, intricate details about the Hunger Games world, about the Hunger Games in and of itself, how it was created, how it came to be, about Snow's character. And one of the things me and my friend were talking about, because she's seen the movie and hasn't read the book yet, was Snow's inner monologue. You are seeing through Snow's point of view in this. So, and you get his inner monologue and his inner thoughts. And I thought that was so interesting. And she said that was one thing that you don't get from the movie that she really wants to read the book for. So I really liked that. And I liked because I felt like Snow had a choice. Snow was not the like monster that we know in the newer Hunger Games. He wasn't this, I feel nothing, I have no, you know. He actually went back and forth between right and wrong. And there were characters in this book who knew right from wrong, who were swayed on the right side, who were swayed on the wrong side, but they thought it was right. And there were definitely morally gray characters in the middle. And I loved having so many different characters from so many of those different like plot points and just avenues of this is right because this is wrong because this is right and wrong. And you know, it was so refreshing after reading the Hunger Games with like hardly anyone on the spectrum fully like out to hear so much of these different perspectives. It was wonderful for me. I loved it. I will say I actually rated this higher than I did every other Hunger Game book. This was a 4.25 for me because of how much morals and actually like talked about this was. I loved it. There's a romance in here and I did like the romance. I didn't like love how it ended entirely, but you know, I knew I wasn't gonna love it 100%. But I like the characters. Like Lucy Gray was such a good character. I feel like she was not just like another Katniss or anything like that. It also explained very well why nobody knew who Lucy was because, and guys, it says at the beginning of the video, I'm talking spoilers here, so I'm not holding back. I need to get this stuff out. But this was one of my thoughts when Lucy won the games was, wait, they said Haymitch was the only one in District 12 who won the games. So like, how did they get this out of their heads? And they apparently erased all the tapes from this games, but also at the time, a lot of these districts didn't have many TVs at all. So most people weren't watching it, and Lucy was not a District 12 native. And that to me was something that I found so interesting because this is something that she brought into play that was never even touched, brought up, talked about as a possibility in any of the other books. And that was that there was more people and more of society living outside of the 13 districts. That it wasn't just these ones who like survived out of everybody. Because Lucy Gray came from the Cubbies who traveled and who wound up in District 12 and ended up getting stuck there, is the implication, which means that they had traveled and were singing to other people groups, to other places. And that to me is such an interesting thing that has never been introduced in the newer Hunger Games. I found it so interesting. I was like, we need a little bit more of this, like, because that would be really interesting if not only did you have all of this, but this entire society, this entire time has believed they are the only ones left when there is a flourishing society outside of them that is not being ruled and tormented in this way. So I thought that was a really cool concept. His best friend, kind of, in this book, the Blythe boy was like hands down my favorite character. He was finally a moral voice for the entire Hunger Games trilogy. I was like, thank you. He was talking about all of the things that I wanted to hear talked about throughout the Hunger Games that really were never touched on. But it was interesting because of the way that Snow went back and forth between right and wrong, because he had some morals and he did sway to the right for a while, and he got himself in a pickle and he almost chose it. But it's like what had been ingrained in him since birth couldn't be fully like taken over and dispersed in a way. And it was really sad, but it was also like he wasn't like, he still had to wrestle with himself before he just, you know, and who knows, maybe he still does wrestle with himself in a way. I don't know. By the end of the book though, he seemed pretty like, now he is Snow. But it's interesting to see that he did have to wrestle with that good first in his earlier days. And it's so interesting that because of him wrestling with that good, that the Hunger Games, like, they actually fed them, they took care of them, they, you know, they gave them better odds and better chances. And I mean, it seems evil and awful, and it is. It is. But the fact that they weren't even feeding them, that they were bringing them in animal troughs, and they were starving them and letting half of them die off from diseases before they even got in the ring, is also awful. Like, you can't even give them bread before you kill them. And the fact that Snow kind of still had the moral, you know, right template at that point to point this out, to want to like bring better into it, it's very weird. But it was just so interesting. I loved how much Snow had to do with it. And I loved how his father also kind of had stuff to do with it, if you know what I mean. The Doctor in this, I loved that Snow wasn't the ultimate evil in his story, that the Doctor was kind of the ultimate evil. And I think that she, in and of herself, did have a giant influence of tipping Snow when he was at the catalyst of like going back and forth, of tipping him completely into evil and you cannot come back. That was really cool. I liked how they played it. I also liked how everybody in the Capitol didn't like the Hunger Games from the start. I was like, oh, this is interesting. They were actually trying to make it more interesting because people even in the Capitol wanted it to stop. And I was like, what? I was so intrigued by this. And even some of the other ones who were kind of morally right, morally gray in between were talking about like, why are we doing this? Or, you know, well, blah, blah, blah. And it was so interesting. And it was also like insane to see the mind, like the brainwashing of what Dr. Gall would say. And then Snow, she would put into place things that she knew would make him think what she had told him he needs to think about it. And like to see the way that brainwashed him, even though like we as the reader know it's morally wrong. We have our Blythe boy there telling him this is wrong, but then she would put events up in a certain way, knowing the background he came from, knowing which way he would sway, to believe and literally mimic and copy her word for word. It was like, it's insane, the brainwashing that he didn't even see happening to him. But I loved it. I loved this book so much. So, not a spoiler-free review. I think this is one of the few that I've done non-spoiler-free, but I do think most people have read The Hunger Games. And a lot of people have read this before me. I'm pretty late to the game, so hopefully a good few of you can still join in the fun discussion. I'd love to hear what you guys thought of the original trilogy and of this one if you've read it. Yeah, let me know down in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me for this rambling session. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!